Zero trust is a strategy. It's a strategy for preventing or containing breaches by removing the trust relationships that we have in digital systems. So the first kind of question that I get, particularly from executives about zero trust, is, well, what do you mean? Zero trust? I can't trust people? Hang on. It's about removing trust relationships from digital systems, not about trusting people, right? So when we talk to CEOs, right, what do CEOs say? Our most important asset is our people. So we want to reinforce that message. Since the book came out last year, I've talked to a lot of other CISOs, and the ones that I talk to that talk about why their zero trust journeys failed, right? Some of them, I talked to one CISO at a large Fortune 50 company, and he said, man, I've started a zero trust process 3 different times, and I've failed 3 different times. And the common denominator of all of those stories isn't about technology. It's not that technology isn't good enough. If you have technology today, you can do zero trust technology with the resources you have today. The reason that CISO said he failed was politics. It was silos. It was territoriality inside your organization. And I think the reason that I love Kindervag's zero trust process is that it's a strategy. At its core, what's a strategy for? A strategy is for bringing people together, getting them all on the same page, having them work together to achieve a common goal. That's what zero trust is about. It's not an architecture. That's why there's no reference architecture. It's not a tool. There's lots of tools out there to solve your problems, but you can use the existing ones you have, even if you don't have budget to go do it like I do. So some people have asked, the book has done really well. I think the most exciting part about the book for me was after it came out, I like to listen to audiobooks, and the gentleman that the publisher got to do the audiobook was actually one of the actors on The Walking Dead. It was so awesome. But some of the folks that have read my books, Well Aware is kind of like Stephen Covey's 7 Habits for Cybersecurity. I think there are 9 cybersecurity habits. And in Well Aware, I tell the stories of successful leaders, both in business and in technology, who've kind of exemplified those 9 different habits. But it's really all about people, right? That's the 2 things that connect the book, right? A lot of folks, when they think of zero trust, they think of NIST, they think of an architecture, and really it's about the people that come together. And one of the cool parts about having an actor read the book is there's so many different characters, right? And the motto for CISA now is see yourself in cyber, right? You've probably heard that. We had a conversation early on with the publisher, and they were like, okay, who's the audience for this zero trust book? And I'm like, everyone in IT needs to play a role, right? And the way that we do that is by helping people see themselves in those roles. So everyone in IT, it's an interdisciplinary group that comes together, and they kind of live this process that Kindervag has created for zero trust. So back in 2010, Kindervag published the paper that kind of founded the zero trust principles. It's called No More Chewy Centers. It's still on the internet. You can download it for free, No More Chewy Centers. But these are the first design principles that kind of helped launch zero trust. And I love that the first one is to focus on the business, right? We've been talking for the past, I don't know how many years, about how we align with the business. And that's really the foundation of where zero trust starts. When I started work at a university, I didn't know how universities made money, right? We charge tuition, and that's cool, but we also have summer conferences. We have live event venues. We have a football team. You might have heard about SMU's death penalty back in the 1980s, where we were paying players before it was cool to pay players. But really, understanding all of the different aspects about what's important to a business helps inform the rest of your security journey, right? You need to collaborate with those partners, right? When you think about identity, right? They have to understand every aspect of the business, all the business processes in order to help secure them. Focusing on the business is the foundation. Designing from the inside out. So this is what's become what we call it deperimeterization. We call it microsegmentation. But really it's about focusing on what's most important and starting with protecting that and working your way outward from there, right? It's not, the big, castle walls and moat kind of paradigm. And again, in higher ed, it is a little bit of the wild, wild west, right? We've got students on our network. We've got folks coming in from all around the world. We might have 50,000 people show up randomly for a football game throughout the year. Focusing on what you can protect is, I think, really one of the foundational pieces. Obviously, least privilege is really important. Identity, I think, is one of the cornerstones of all of Zero Trust. But I think this last one doesn't get the kind of press that it deserves, and it's really about inspecting and logging all traffic, right? But think back to 2010 about how challenging and how innovative that was to think, oh my gosh, we're going to log everything. At the time, maybe you weren't logging anything, or maybe you were just logging denies. Maybe you were thinking about firewall logs, but you weren't thinking about application logs. So capturing everything really helps to give us that big picture, that visibility, to make sure that we can do a good job at protecting what's important to us, right? One of the most challenging questions I've faced in my career early on, something happened at our university, and I couldn't answer the question, how did this happen? What happened? And fundamentally, that's about logging, right? I can't go back. If I can't go back and answer what happened, then we can't really improve and continue to mature our program. So Kindervog is the only person that's been out there consulting around Zero Trust for the last 15 years. And he's worked with thousands of companies across the world. And one of the things that he realized in the process is that, oh my gosh, I can't just come in and make a couple of changes. What we really need is a repeatable process for being able to do Zero Trust, right? Okay, cool, I need to maybe get a couple of tools. I want to go do a SASE or an SWG kind of process to secure my environment. That's great, but you need to bring everyone to the table. And you need to think holistically about how you're going to be able to maintain that process, right? If you change tools, are you starting from square one? So the first thing that's part of this design methodology is defining a protect surface. So what's a protect surface? I like to think of it as the opposite of an attack surface. So we've kind of been sold this idea of an attack surface, right? What's an attack surface? In theory, right, if we shrink our attack surface, somehow that's going to make us more secure. But really, I think that every device in the world can be your attack surface. So I think about the Peloton breach, for example. They reverse engineered Peloton's API through the mobile devices that could enroll with Peloton, and they were able to exfiltrate data, right? How do you control your attack surface if every device in the world is able to be a part of that? Again, going back to the inside-out design method, we wrap our arms around a protect surface. So in this case, it could be a service. We could group like assets together, right? I've got a database with SSNs, maybe 2 or 3. Let's just put all of them in the same protect surface. When we think about Zero Trust, we think about preventing or containing, right? We want to limit the blast radius. But also, when I'm defining a protect surface, I can bring the group of people together that's going to help protect that protect surface. That might be your security team, but it's not just security that does Zero Trust, right? And I think this is one of the most important things to take away. If Zero Trust is just for the security nerds in the room, right? I'm one of them, right? I made myself a shirt because I believe in Zero Trust so much. right? Zero trust has to be for everyone in IT, right? So you've got to have your sysadmins, you've got to have your developers, you've got to have your identity team, you've got to have your desktop support folks, you've got to have your help desk, your training team, right? Everyone that's involved in that particular Protect surface that's associated with that service, right? Think of it like a tiger team. We're bringing that interdisciplinary group of folks together, and now we're focused on that specific Protect surface. How many Protect surfaces should you have? We kind of went off the deep end. We were an early adopter in microsegmentation, and it didn't scale. Again, going back to aligning with our business, we have over 100 different microsegmented Protect surfaces in our data center. It was too much for our small team to handle. In talking with Kindervog, he works with a bank that has maybe 26, 27 Protect surfaces, right? So a little bit of different order of magnitude there. So again, go back to the principles, align your Protect surfaces with the resources that you have available and how the business is operating. But mapping transaction flows, what does that mean? In Zero Trust, there is no concept of unknown traffic. If it's unknown, if you can't classify it, it should be blocked. In practice, oh my gosh, I can't count the number of vendors that don't have adequate documentation in their service that allow us to understand how the app works and how to protect it. That's a challenge. I can't count the number of vendors that say, don't put a firewall in this service. This application won't work if you use a firewall. Okay, come on, Microsoft. We can do better than that. And so as practitioners, we've had to come up with ways of being able to map our transaction flows independently of that documentation. So maybe that's in a test environment. I've got a proxy and I'm sending everything to the proxy, so I can definitively know before I put a service into production what port it's going to use and what order. Maybe if I don't have the resources, I can do a packet capture to figure that out. Maybe the team can come together to talk through those issues as they're working through the process. But again, no unknown traffic should be allowed in a Zero Trust environment. So now we're at architecture finally, and we're like 7 steps in before we've started talking about the specific controls that you're going to apply in a Zero Trust environment. And I think, again, as a security practitioner, I'm guilty of this. I want to have a project in, and we're going to deploy, I don't know, EDR. We're going to deploy web application firewalls. Well, so I think about, as a CISO, well, I've got to protect everything in my environment, and I'm not thinking about specific Protect surfaces, but this is really, I think, where the power of Zero Trust comes in, because we're narrowly tailoring the controls we have to the Protect surfaces we have. We don't need to license all of the different security tools that we might have to have for every Protect surface that I'm protecting. Again, Zero Trust should be very bespoke per Protect surface. And I think, again, we've all heard the phrase, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. There have been a number of studies done about Zero Trust, and it really is the most effective way of protecting our organizations from a financial perspective, right? I think that's some of the concern that we've heard as well from folks. They think Zero Trust is going to cost a lot of money. It's going to be a lot of extra work. And I don't think that's the case. I think narrowly tailoring your security program to align with the business, well, first, because you're focused on prevention, you don't have to pay the cost of a breach, but also, right, you're not having this problem where we've got lots of duplicative tools in our environments. We've got 10 tools to do the same 80% of the controls we're after. We've narrowly tailored it so that I've got my ERP system, I've wrapped the right controls around that, but I've also got my cloud container apps, and I've wrapped the right controls around that, and I've not overspent on a solution. So Zero Trust policies are interesting. If you read the book, Kindervog has created what he calls the Kipling method, which is just an homage to Rudyard Kipling's poem from 1911, where he actually invented the terms who, what, where, when, how, and why. That kind of is an abstraction for thinking about policy. So my background, I came from the network world. I think about firewalls when I think about policy, or ACLs. But today, what has policy, right? Your EDR tool might have policy. Your identities team might have policies that they deploy. Your developers might be pushing policy as code down to your containerized applications. So this idea of having an interdisciplinary team have an abstracted conversation about what policies we should deploy, again, gets everyone on the same page so that as we're deploying controls, we can definitively say, look, we're really doing all the same things and we're protecting in all the right ways for this particular protect surface. And then finally, monitor and maintain. So hopefully we're getting all the logs, but I know Joe kind of left us with the firefighting image. I think of Zero Trust as not firefighting, but more problem management. So if you've read any Deming, right, you kind of think about how do we holistically solve whole categories of issue before they even come up. A lot of us use MSSPs or outsourced security operations centers. Some of us might have our own internal ones, but they have to be an integral part of this overall process. So if your SOC is seeing a type of alert, and maybe they're being overwhelmed, maybe it's a lot of noise, maybe they're just processing it, but if they can just say, hey, if you uncheck that checkbox in, say, Active Directory, you're going to be both more secure and you're going to get less noise, we're going to see less alerts, and we're going to be more effective. We can do a better job as the SOC, as well as make you more secure. How many times can they do that and provide that information back to you? How can your outsourced MSSP SOC actually provide more value to you? They can be a part of your Zero Trust journey by helping inform this conversation about, I've got a protect surface, how do I narrowly tailor my controls, my security monitoring around that protect surface? So where do we start? Again, this is from Kindervog's journey. He suggests that we should have a learning curve, and of course he comes from Forrester, so they've got their wave methodology, right? But this is like a wave. You don't start with your crown jewels. Obviously, we want to protect the crown jewels as quickly as we can, but this idea of a protect surface, bringing that group of folks together, is going to be a little new. So let's have some learning protect surfaces. Let's select some protect surfaces that's going to help get us up to speed more quickly, help everyone start to practice together as a team, right? If you're a coach, you want to have some drills with a team. Maybe you've got a scrimmage or two before you have a real game, right? That's the concept. Get to the crown jewels right away, but the next steps after that I think are really important. I call this the Zero Trust OSI model. Nobody else is calling this the OSI model. It's a terrible analogy, but I keep using it because there are 7 things in the Zero Trust journey, right? So this actually comes from the Identity Defined Security Alliance. But you've got users, application, infrastructure, identity, workload, access, and transactions, right? So one of the questions that comes up a lot is, well, how do I help train my folks who aren't in security, that are on the network team, that are developers, to even recognize what a trust really is? And where the trusts are come at the intersections of these 7 categories, right? So where users intersect with identity, let's find where those trusts are. Where infrastructure connects with identity, right? Are we putting in firewall rules that allow a developer to talk to a specific app? Are we embedding credentials inside our code, or are we embedding IPs directly in our code? Those are trust relationships, right? Helping people kind of conceptualize where the trusts are, right? We know that that's what your cyber criminals are after. They're exploiting the trust relationships we have That comes from decades of experience with pen testers. How do we roll that back into the zero trust process? Here's how we can help identify those trust relationships that are out there, right? They're not necessarily obvious all the time, particularly if you've been running an application for a number of years. There is a zero trust maturity model. The CSA is actually working on a new one in collaboration with CISA. This is the one that we used for the book. It comes again from Kindervag, and I like this one. It's the same 5-step maturity model, initial, repeatable, defined, managed. Sorry, it's a little hard to read here, but you have that maturity model for each layer of the design process, right? And that's with the understanding that you don't have to focus on the same level of maturity all across the board, right? You can align with the business by finding the right maturity for each step along the way. I talked about people, right? It all comes back to people, right? Zero trust can't succeed without having everyone at the table, right? Again, anyone in IT. And so these are the 9 cybersecurity habits from the book Well Aware. The habits on the left-hand side of your screen, the first 4 habits are all internal habits. They're things that you do inside yourself when you're working on your own. The final 5 habits are things that you do when you're working with other people. So I mentioned thinking like a coach. So if I'm coaching people up, right? Whether you've worked with an athletic coach over the years or maybe a leadership coach, all of the best ones help you by identifying your strengths and improving upon those. So we know that 50% of human behavior is based in habits. And we also know that from the research, habits work like a muscle. So if you think of these like muscle groups, right, if I'm effectively a sprinter, I have a different role to play on a football team than maybe if I was a power lifter, right? So as a coach, I want to help identify that and build those people up because we work together as a team. We've developed a cyber personality test, so you can feel free to take a snapshot of that and refer back to it later. But it's a 5-minute quiz, 22 questions. It'll just help you identify your biggest internal strength and your biggest external strength. So for me, I'm a cybersecurity explorer, which means that I have high vigilance and high diligence. So I'm always kind of on the lookout for new potential threats. That's my vigilance habit, and I'm always kind of coming up with plans to help do something about them. That's my diligence habit. But that's not to say that I'm perfect at every category. I need a team around me that's going to help me achieve our goals, and I need to have that team aligned with the particular outcomes that the organization is after. This is a team that I worked with a little while ago. A CISO brought me in to help do an assessment, and we found that their team was very heavily represented in the vigilance quadrant, and that made a lot of sense for that team because they were focused on security operations. That's not to say that every team needs to be organized that way. I worked with another CISO that her team, she had 5 folks in the literacy quadrant, and it turned out that made perfect sense because that was the GRC team, right? They needed to understand the inventory of devices that they had, the potential issues, the vulnerabilities that were represented in that quadrant. Again, thinking like a coach, right? Zero trust is a strategy. A strategy is for helping people get together. And I think our roles as CISO is really about building people up, right? It's about the relationships that we had and developed throughout our organizations, just like Joe talked about. That's the way we get better. That's the way we succeed with zero trust. And if you read the book, I've got some laptop stickers out on the front desk. Definitely check them out. But thank you all for the time. And with that, where do we go?